Okay, so to start this podcast, I feel weird because I picked a history movie and that's your domain. So how to start is just, I just don't know.
Well, it's a history movie, but it's also a movie that is a good cause, obviously.
I think the internet would argue that, but we'll get into that. But anyway, because we're doing something that is going to require a lot of deep discussions, I wanted to start with a game.
Okay.
Okay, so the women were granted the right to vote with the 19th Amendment in the United States.
Yes.
Okay. Some states had the right to vote prior to that. Some states had only the right to vote for president prior to that. And then some states did not get the right to vote for women until after the passage of the 19th Amendment. So Gotcha. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a state, and I'm going to give you two states. One is going to have had the right to vote prior, and I will tell you if it's just president or not. And then one will have not had it until after. And you have to tell me which one's which.
I'm going to be bad at this.
Okay, but you're going to have to do it. So I'm going to give you Colorado and Arkansas.
I'm going to go with stereotypes and say Arkansas did not.
Yes, that is correct. Okay, since you're going to be that way and we're going to go with stereotypes, then I'm going to do this to you. One of them had the right to vote prior, but only for president. Okay, so I just want to make that clarification in case anybody tries to call me out. Okay?
Gotcha.
Massachusetts and Rhode Island.
Damn.
Yeah, I figured you couldn't go with stereotypes there, so let's go.
I'm going to go Massachusetts.
Massachusetts what?
Did not.
Did not. You are correct. Rhode Island, prior to the 19th Amendment, had the right to vote for president as of 1917. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're going with stereotypes, huh? Let's see here. Kansas and New Hampshire.
Kansas did not.
Kansas did have full rights to vote for women as of 1912.
Damn.
Mm-hmm. And then I'll do one more for you. And since I know what you're doing, I'm going to try to be annoying. Oklahoma and South Carolina.
South Carolina did not.
Correct. Oklahoma did as of 1918. Full rights. Huh? Crazy, right?
Well, it's going to probably a little bit tie into my history minute as to how I was able to guess most of them, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Well, it's unfair that you were able to guess most of them, considering prior to this game I asked you if you would be able to. However,
didn't say I would be able to get them all right.
However, there is a first state that had all that, and you'll be giving that in your history minute. Correct. That I'm aware, which is why I did not pick that state. So while you guys are listening, if you know that ahead of time, just jot it down, see if you get it right, and let us know afterwards if you got it, because I did not know prior to this movie. Anyways, the movie I picked this week was Suffragette. Yep. I'm Shay.
I'm Tyler.
And this is cinematically correct.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, do you want to just go into your beer before we jump into this movie?
Well, I think we have to, which is ironic because suffragism was often tied to temperance, which was no alcohol.
I can get down with that.
But I'm having a beer regardless.
We can't not.
It's the Great Divide Brewery.
And what did you pick it for?
The Great Divide. And also
there's flamingos on that beer.
It does have flamingos.
Oh, okay.
It's a strawberry rhubarb sour. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm going.
And just to clarification, in case people were wondering from last week, no, I did not punish him because I could have made him drink an IPA, but I decided that my heart was not that black. So, how do we feel?
That's actually really good.
Yeah, I figured you were going to think that.
I'm going to give it a 4.5.
So if you hear next week's movie and you have a horrible, awful beer to make him hate, which he hates like IPAs and stouts and things like that. If you have something that's going to match next week's movie, tweet it at me, DM me, whatever it is, because it's coming.
I don't like this game.
It's just, anymore. It's coming. But anyway, okay, do you want to give a brief synopsis?
Brief synopsis.
Brief synopsis. This movie is a historical telling of the suffrage movement in Great Britain during the 1900s. So 1912 is when the movie takes place. And it's really about women getting to the point of saying, to hell with everything. we're going to do it no matter what the cost.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
So we know that a lot of y'all haven't seen it. So if you haven't seen it, there is a ton of spoilers. So if you are intending to watch it, probably pause right now, go watch that, and come back, because we are going to have a ton of spoilers. And we also are going to be talking a lot about the controversies that came up because of this film and kind of going into all of that. So if you haven't seen it, please go and do that now. I just want to make sure I get that out of the way, because it's a Meryl Streep movie, and you don't ever want to not see a Meryl Streep movie with, like, the first newness type thing. You know what I mean? You don't want to, like, have preconceived notions.
Yeah.
So, anyway, let's get into the IMDb. I will start by saying that a lot of these actors/actresses I did not know, with obvious, very glaring exceptions. So, I don't have a lot of people I want to talk about. So, do you want to start on this? Because, again, I didn't know a lot of them.
Well, I didn't know a lot of them, honestly.
We will talk about the main character. Now, this is the first movie I've seen of hers. Her name is Carey Mulligan. She played Maud Watts. I believe she's a British actress, just based on, like, what I saw on her IMDb. I genuinely don't know, so definitely correct me if I'm wrong there. But some of the stuff says, Wildlife, Far from the Madding Crowd, Skylight, The Spoils of Babylon, The Great Gatsby, Drive, Never Let Me Go, Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. None of this I've seen, but I will say she was a good actress. She played a combination of women, so she was the main character, and you saw everything through her eyes, her story.
Right.
But she was not a real person in real life, and it was a combination of people, and, I thought she acted very well. I thought her story was very, impactful. It showed a lot of, stuff beyond just the women's right to vote that was going on in the world.
I think that's probably why she's a combination of several people rather than one person, which is kind of a shame given that it's a historical context movie. But I can understand needing that to add a little bit more depth to the disparity at that time with all of the different things that women did not have control over.
Yeah. Now we'll go into more about, like, what could have been better and things like that. But that's who she was. So did you have anything else you wanted to say about her?
Not really. Fine acting across the board. Every actor in this movie did a great job.
Yeah.
I can't complain. But there's so many characters, and it's hard to go through the entire list.
Yeah. So another one, obviously, we have to mention is Helena Bonham Carter. She's one of my favorite actresses. I probably mention it anytime she pops up in a film. She's in, like, everything. She's in big and small movies, which I love about her.
Yeah.
But she plays a pharmacist who owns and runs a shop with her husband. They are the only couple that seem to be in on this whole movement together. And she is kind of the leading force on the ground, because Meryl Streep's character is definitely the runner of everything, but she's not really on the ground doing everything with them.
Right. It's almost like the mafia, where she is one of the captains out there controlling a section of the gang, for lack of a better term, where Meryl Streep is the mob boss. She's like the head of everyone.
Yeah, basically.
The figurehead, kind of.
So the only question I had on her character was they kept saying her heart wouldn't handle it, and they wasn't sure what that referred to, because she was a pharmacist, so she wasn't, taking in the chemicals like the other girls were at the laundry, and so I wasn't sure if she had some kind of a heart condition. I don't know if the real person did, and I just didn't see that. I don't know. So that was the only question I had. Like, I wish that they had told me more about her, because her character was very interesting to me, and her dynamic with her husband was very interesting to me.
Right.
But
I think that's entirely fair. I think it was more to do with her treatment in prison, given that prison was terrible for
all of them,
everyone, and it's still terrible to this day for different reasons. And
probably some of the same reasons.
Some of the same reasons.
Let's be real here.
Entirely fair. But no, it's also part of the stereotype that women are weaker, which is false. Up till very recently, women weren't known to be able to run a marathon. That's why they were banned from the Boston Marathon. Right. And it's all kinds of prejudice that is wrong.
You glad you get that out?
Yeah.
You happy? Okay.
A little bit.
Okay, so another character in this movie would be Meryl Streep. Now, we cannot not mention her. Now, she is only in the movie for like...
Well, if there was ever a movie to not mention Meryl Streep, it has to be this movie because she's in it for 4 minutes.
But she's Meryl Streep and you can't ignore her.
I mean, that's obvious, but at the same time, of her entire film career, this is probably one of the top 5
smallest roles.
Smallest roles.
I mean, fair. If you guys know of a smaller role, I'd be curious to know what it is because this is a very tiny role. Anyways, she played Emmeline Pankhurst. I don't know if that's exactly how you say it. Was a very prominent member of the women's suffrage movement, maybe a founding member. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm going to get into part of that with the History Minute.
So he's going to get into that, so don't come for me because I don't look up history. Tyler does. Anyway, she is the kind of mother hen of everything. She's kind of promoting rebellion and, you know, she's the person behind the wall thing. You don't see her, but they all talked about her, you know, it was this whole thing. You only saw her for like 5 seconds. I loved her character because I love Meryl Streep. So, like, I don't know if I was supposed to love her character. I don't know the truth behind who that person was and anything like that. But, like, Meryl Streep is Meryl Streep. So, like, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have to give my connection because I'm not trying to drop the ball here. I know it's a cop-out to use Meryl Streep because she's in everything. But a lot of these actresses and actors were from England or some other origin of that nature where a lot of the Gilmore Girls characters do not cross over. So I had a real problem there. So Meryl Streep was in another movie which I would like to see and we have discussed watching, which is called Doubt. And it's about the whole priest issues. Yeah. Y'all know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. I'm from Massachusetts, so you can guess what I'm talking about.
Well, we are down Spotlight, so...
Yeah, but this one's dark. Anyway, she was in Doubt with Viola Davis, who is in How to Get Away with Murder with Paris.
Yeah.
So, there we go.
So, the only person that I need to mention, because there's a lot of characters in this movie.
Yes,
there's so many characters, is my Lord of the Rings reference, which is Joff Bell.
Okay.
He's the creepy manager boss in the laundry.
Oh, ew.
Yeah.
Ew.
So he was in Green Street Hooligans with Elijah Wood, who is in Lord of the Rings.
Ew. That's all I gotta say. Also, you had it easier because Lord of the Rings has a lot of English characters.
Yeah, I know.
So, rude. Okay, so.
Where do we go from here?
So, there's a lot with this movie. And I want us to be sensitive to the culture and time period and all of that was then and is now. Okay? So, that said, before we get into my problems with the suffragette movement, the problems I still have today, all of that, which I do want to talk about because y'all know that I talk about women's rights in almost every podcast if I can fit it in. So, I want to talk about that. But I don't want to ignore the other things that came up because of this movie. I think it's important that we acknowledge that there are a lot of different opinions on this movie, and rightfully so, but I want to separate them a little bit. So, this movie had a lot of racial issues that people brought up. So, the first one being that there was a campaign done for this movie, and Meryl Streep, along with other actresses, which I have the photo if anybody wants to see it, they wore shirts with a quote from Emmeline Pankhurst. Yeah, and it said, "I would rather be a rebel than a slave."
Yeah.
And that went very badly. The optics were not good. And so I read a lot of things and trying to understand exactly what people were upset about. And from what I can ascertain, the biggest problem people had was the word slave and the fact that they felt that the word slave should not be used in that context because that has very racial connotations and it devalued what African Americans were dealing with, and it was tone deaf is what people were saying.
I mean, that is entirely fair, but it's from a different time, and that's not an excuse. They were trying to use another huge problem with society to illustrate their plight. So it's not crazy to use inflammatory language to get your point across because it throws a little bit more weight there. Not saying that is right or wrong. It just is. And it's not entirely fair to be judging what they say based off of our current understanding of morality and tolerance.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that I would caveat that with is that while you cannot look at the past through a modern day perspective, because that is just not fair, and we cannot say how we would feel if we were in that culture, in that time period, without our knowledge now. We cannot say that. We can say we would be better, but we just can't. Anyway, what we can do is when you're promoting a movie, you can choose a less divisive quote. You could have chosen something that didn't have that kind of connotation wrapped around it. Now, I don't know what the reason was. I don't know. I don't know. I don't. The filmmaker did come out with a statement talking about it and explaining that it was part of a larger quote and is explaining the context of what was going on. So basically, this is a snippet of what Time Out London published. It says, the original quote was intended to rouse women to stand up against oppression. It is a rallying cry and absolutely not intended to criticize those who have no choice but to submit to oppression, or to reference the Confederacy, as some people who saw the quote and photo out of context have surmised. The full quote was, I know that women, once convinced that they are doing what is right, that their rebellion is just, will go on, no matter what the difficulties, no matter what the dangers, so long as there are women alive to hold up the flag of rebellion, I would rather be a rebel than a slave. Time Out published the original feature online and in print in the UK a few weeks ago. The context and photo shoot of the feature were absolutely clear to readers who read the piece, and it has been read by 500,000 people with no complaints. Right. So, it's hard to say. I can understand not wanting that term used, but I can also understand why they chose to do so. So,
right. I mean, we're getting into the point of moral relativism where one thing is worse than another, and that's not the point. Those things are both horrible.
So we can condemn two things without making another.
We should be big enough as a society to say that is bad, that is also bad, and not compare them together, because we should strive to be fixing everything concurrently. We're not supposed to pick and choose one thing to fix at a time. Fix everything. Make the world a better place.
Right. Okay, so that also said, we should also acknowledge one other controversy. So once we get the controversies out of the way, we can push them aside.
Okay.
So the other controversy here, also regarding race, is that this movie was entirely whitewashed. So people felt that there should have been women of color included in the suffragette movement. So at first, my first thought, and I will be honest, I was a little bit ignorant. I felt, okay, well, at that time period, wasn't it predominantly white middle-class women that did this? And while, yes, it is true, predominantly it was white middle-class women, there were prominent women of color who did do this. And the first one that came to mind, or not came to mind, that came up in my research was Princess Sophia Dulip Singh. Apparently, she was actually a friend of Emmeline Pankhurst, which was Meryl Streep's character. Now, the only reasons I can think of that they left her out is, one, for a lot of the movement, she did stay out of the limelight. She didn't go to protest. She didn't do any of those things. She kind of stayed to herself. But then two, when she did start protesting, she even threw herself in front of a car at one point, things like that. She was never arrested. And I think this movie did very much focus on being arrested as kind of like being part of the cause. So right. I don't know if maybe they just didn't want to show that just because that wasn't part of the narrative they were spinning. I don't know. But I do want to acknowledge that we do know that there are people that were excluded, and I don't know how I feel about it, because there's part of me that feels like you can't show everyone, but then there's the other part of me that feels like, well, but you should show the full breadth of people things. That were in it.
I think this movie is going to struggle with that, only because there's so many characters already that some of them kind of blend together. Because there's no real deep exposition on any one character except for Maud, who's fictional anyway. Everyone else is just kind of thrown into the pot and on screen, and it kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
Right. I almost feel like if they added this princess in, it would have almost felt disingenuous to her, because it feels like her story is far bigger than Maud's story for sure. and probably even, I mean, not necessarily Emmeline. I don't know her full scope, but a lot of the characters in this princess was definitely had a larger story. So I almost feel like she deserves her own movie.
Right.
So I would be probably upset if they made her movie all white people. Like, that would be not okay. Like, obviously she's from India. Like, I mean,
right.
But
well, I think in terms of that, the American context would be if they did a movie.
I don't think they have an
American. But if they did a movie and they didn't include Sojourner Truth, if it was period correct.
Okay, that's disgusting. They can't not do that.
That's what I'm saying. That would be horrifyingly egregious if that was not included.
Right. So I don't know. There's a few reasons that it could have happened. We don't know, but we do want to acknowledge that we understand where that's coming from, and I can't say much to that. But I still think that this is important that we're talking about this, and there's not enough movies on it. Like, y'all have your war movies, but, like, we don't have anything about this, like, at all? Really?
I mean, there's a few, but there's not
much.
Not even close to the number of
no.
other historical movies.
Okay, so let's get into the actual movie itself. So one of the complaints that you had about this movie was a lack of exposition. Did you want to talk about that?
Well, so given that it is not as well covered in school or...
It's really covered in school, I mean...
Not the same as a lot of other parts of history.
No, fair. That's fair.
I mean, it is included, but it's kind of glossed over, and it's not shown in movies. And it's just not prominent, which is unfortunate. They didn't do a very good job of giving you a background on the characters. You didn't really connect with anyone.
No. I mean, give or take Maud, but I mean, even then, she wasn't super likable. Like, you didn't hate her, but you didn't...
I mean, yeah, that was the only one. And then second to that is Helena Bonham Carter. But really...
I just wanted to know more. I had all these questions.
That's what I'm saying, is that there was no real meat to this other than it's a worthy cause.
Right. Or I don't know if it was a mayor or what, but the politician's wife. Like, she took in girls to work for her so they could be protected from the awful men that they worked for. Right. I want to know more about that. That is interesting to me. Like, she obviously had to... I don't know if her husband was on board with this or what, or if she fought with him. I don't know. I have questions. I want to know. Like, these things are interesting to me, and I think that they're an important part of what happened.
Those little snapshots of humanity are what give a person their depth. And that's just, it's not just one thing defines a person.
Right. They're not just a figurehead for a cause. They're a person. They have flaws and they have attributes, and we should show all of it. But
so that was my main complaint with this movie, was that it felt too centered on a cause, and it's a singular brainwashed kind of go to the mission.
Right. Which is funny because on the internet I saw that people were saying that this was promoted as to be a movie about the cause, and it was actually more about a person and a person's character's development, because they were talking about the focus on Maud and not on the rest of the cause, which you're saying it's more of a cause-based movie and not really about the characters.
Right.
So
I disagree with
the internet. You generally do. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's par for the course.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to mention, because I always... when I go through movies, I always kind of bring up how females are represented. I think in a movie that is predominantly female, it is only fair to talk about how the men are represented. And that would be horribly. Now, I will say that for the time period, I understand the reason why they would represent men in such a horrible light, because they were arguably horrible to women back then on a predominant stage. However, I find it very, very, very difficult to believe that there was not... other than Helena Bonham Carter's husband, there wasn't anyone that had even a shred of humanity, that felt some kind of pity for these women or anything. Right. They did not show a man so much as, like, have a feeling. I mean, Maud's husband not only kicked her out after she was fighting for the cause, he took her son and then gave it away for adoption. And it didn't look like a lot of time had passed. It did not look like it was like years upon years. It looked like weeks, maybe months. Okay, that is evil on a level that I can't explain.
That is still your son. Like, that is your child.
And his rationale was, but nobody else would take care of him. How about you? You are the father.
I can't be a mother to him. He has a mother. You kicked her out. You're a dick.
Yeah, it was just... I understand that a lot of men are awful and horrible that way, but when he started, he seemed like he was a decent guy. Like, yes, he obviously was a product of his time, and he felt he was the man of the house, and she must listen to him and whatever, but he seemed like he was helping to protect her, and he was, when he was telling her not to go to the cause, it wasn't because he didn't want her to fight for what was right, but he was afraid for her safety.
Right.
Things like that. That's how it felt. But then when that happened, I was just like, okay, so he has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. That's disgusting. And then you had the cop, who you said he was a famous actor.
Yes, he is. His name is Brendan Gleeson, father of Domhnall Gleeson.
You were going to say that first. That's
yes.
why you said Dom. I'm like, where is he going with this?
We've actually done a Domhnall Gleeson film.
We have?
Brooklyn. He's the Irish gentleman.
Should have called Joe for that.
Yeah. But Brendan Gleeson, he's been on quite a few movies. I mean,
he looked familiar to me. But his character was another one where I was like, they could have done more with that. It seemed like they were trying to show that he had some humanity by the way he was talking to Maud, and by the way he said to one of the guards at one point that the way that you're treating them is just barbaric.
Right.
So it sounded like he was about to have like a shred of humanity in him, but they never allowed for that to happen. They kept that out of it. And it just... I know that they didn't want to make men look sympathetic because they didn't want to be unsympathetic to women, but I also feel like it's just not accurate. There's no way that every single man that ever existed in that time period didn't care at all. Like, I'm
sure quite a few of them, if not the overwhelming majority, were uncompromising assholes, but
there had to have been one or two.
Just based off sheer math, there had to have been at least a couple.
Well, right. So it just... I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way because it made me feel like you don't need to push one group of people down to lift another group up.
It's the same problem with all the bumbling idiot husband stereotypes. You don't have to make the man stupid to make the woman seem better.
Right. These women were going to look like strong women without the men looking like irredeemable characters.
Make strong characters for everyone. Why? Stop being lazy and work harder on better writing.
Right. I don't know, was one of those things. But anyway, so we have to mention it because I do mention it with women. So
where do you want to go from there? Because you have the schedule. Or that?
Okay, so I think it's important that in a movie like this, we acknowledge the movement as a whole in the way that the movie portrayed it. And I know you're going to be talking about it more in the historical context. So there probably will be differences here. But from what the movie showed, the suffragette movement was not just about the women's right to vote. Now, that was what they were pushing for. That's what they were asking for. But it was because of problems that went far beyond that. So some of the problems that they highlighted in this movie were the wage gap. I don't know if I can say this word on a podcast, but rape.
Sexual assault.
Yeah. Sexual assault, rights to children, and then they also talked about things that women had to do for their bodies to, I guess, make men happy, where it came to wearing corsets, and they showed things that they were doing to their feet, which was an Asian thing, but it showed it, so I don't know.
Well, all women's fashion has been for
men,
for the benefit of men,
right? For
basically forever. I mean, high heels, the corset, bikinis, all of it, down the list.
Right. So we can go into all of the things that make me angry if we would like to do that. But I do want to talk about a few of the things that they mentioned. So for one, the wage gap. Maud mentioned that she was making, I forget the exact amounts.
13 pence a week?
To a man's 19,
or shillings a week, something like that?
Right, to a man's 19, right?
Yep.
So, and she was saying how the women work more hours. They have shorter lifespans because of breathing in chemicals. They have a chest cough, something to do with that.
Her mother was scalded alive by boiling water.
Right.
No, thank you.
And nothing were to come of it. The girls started working full time at 7 years old. I'm sure that there are more issues than just being a woman. However, along with this whole working this way, a big thing that they showed that was horrifying and disgusting and sadly not fixed is the way male management treated women. And they showed the manager taking sexual advantage of a 13-year-old girl.
A child. And
you also knew from the way that the discussions were happening that it had also happened to Maude. It was obviously a serial thing that happened with many women. And I'm also certain that he was a depiction of many men in that power. And we can say that that has not changed very much. Now, I don't think that, well, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say I don't think that they would go so far as to actually, intercourse with a person, but I actually don't know that, and I actually am not confident in saying that.
Still do. Are you kidding me?
I like to believe that we've come further in life, but we have done the movie Bombshell. If you guys have not listened to that, go back and do that. But that is an example of something in modern times that shows that men in power still to this day take advantage of women.
Not all men in power. Certain horrible men.
I'm not saying all men. I'm just saying that it is a thing that men in power do take advantage of women still to this day. We have not come past that. So seeing that in this movie was horrifying to me and just a reminder that we still have so far to go. But
people, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, deserve to be treated with the same level of respect that any other person is afforded. People are people.
Agreed.
And that's just... We need to violently make people realize that.
Well, and I am a proponent of if somebody speaks up, they should not feel that their whole life will be ruined because of it. And we have not moved past that. So that is a problem. The other things, you talked about fashion, but the other thing was the rights to children. So that's something we a little bit disagree on, but they did discuss the fact that at this time, the rights to a child was solely to the man and only to the man. So when Maude was kicked out, she had no rights to her son, and that is why he was able to be put up for adoption. Which in nowadays cases, if they were married like that, they would have joint custody, and he would have had to take her to court in order to...
she would have probably won primary custody.
Well, right, but regardless of the fact, they were married, so... they would have had joint custody. You would have had to take her to court before you could have ever done adoption. And I believe even if you don't have custody, in an adoption situation nowadays, both parents must sign off.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is skewed to the other direction where women get considerably more control over children, which I don't necessarily agree with. It should be more equal because they're still my child just as much as they're your child. I'm fine with accepting more responsibility for that, but it shouldn't be one way or the other. It should be more evenly split.
Believe what you will. I'm not going to get into that because I'll look horrible, but...
why can't you just take responsibility and have equal representation?
I believe in equal representation, but I also believe that we have issues right now where men will disappear while a woman has just conceived a child, and the only thing that may happen to them is that they get slapped with child support, but that child is still going to grow up without a father, and the woman is the one that's responsible for making sure that kid is okay.
Which is a problem in and of itself, but it's not right to take a whole section of the population and disenfranchise them, comparatively speaking, in the eyes of the law. In any case.
I agree, but we have strides to make before we get there, I think.
Okay, fair.
Anyways, okay, so we already talked about the fact that Maude was kind of a combination of women. Did you want to, is there anything more you wanted to kind of go into on that? Because you had said before that you'd wished that it was a little bit different.
Well, so, I mean, I can understand the choice because they wanted to humanize it and bring in a lot of different issues that can't be covered by one particular person unless that person experienced all of them. I think that they could have gone a different route and focus the movie, even with the same actress, but focus the movie on the woman that got run over at the Derby, Emily Wilding Davison. And that would have been more accurate historically, and I would argue probably just as impactful, because at the end of the movie she gets run over by a horse. And that's just, you're crushed by the fact that she died for her cause.
I agree with that. I mean, I would have liked to see it more in like the Love Actually way, where they showed each person living their life through, and like the movement through them in cyclical ways at the same time. Because I think, like, I would have loved to see the politician's wife story. I would love to see more of Helena Bonham Carter's story. I would love to see more of Maud's story. I would love to see more of the kid's story, like the girl who was raped and then moved over to the politician's wife's house, like, and her mother was fired and all of that. Like, I would love to see her story. Like, there are just a lot of stories in here that I want to hear more about, and I feel like it would be more impactful to know all of that.
So the Snatch style of filming, which
I actively said Love Actually, which is a movie I enjoy, and not Snatch for that reason. So,
well, it's the same concept. It's the intertwined connectivity of one story with a large pool of characters.
Well, yes, because I think that this called for that, because all of their stories is important to the movement. It's not a singular story that mattered. The whole point was that all women matter, not just the one we chose to highlight here.
I think that would have been a better telling of this movie, personally.
Yeah, I do too. Anyway, one thing that is just kind of random about this movie, but I felt like it was important to talk about, was that the women's suffrage movement was the first instance of law enforcement using photo surveillance on persons of interest.
Yeah, so that's problematic for other reasons, not the least of which is that it can be abused by the government to control political dissent not related to a worthy cause and just basically enforce their will.
All of technology are we talking about?
Oh yeah, we have that problem to this day where photo surveillance and cameras and
recording devices.
We have a paid-for wiretap in our house that you bought.
He's talking about Alexa, by the way, guys.
Yeah, it's just Facebook. All of the big tech companies are tracking all of our movements and all of our information, and the government will see all of it. Mm-hmm. And they can go to hell.
Lovely.
Well,
you say that on a recording.
It's a violation of my constitutional rights to privacy that they have access to that information.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Which is problematic on so many levels. Sorry.
I'm glad that you put that on a recording to release out to the public. Woo!
Yeah. But that I am upset that the government watches and listens to everything that we say and do.
They're watching and listening right now.
They are.
How do you feel about
100%.
that? Yeah.
I don't like it at all.
Okay. Well, anyway, but I thought that was important to know because it's also another thing intertwined with this. So, anyway. So reactions currently to this movie have been kind of across the board, little here, little there. But there was a protest at the British premiere of this movie. The Sisters Uncut, I guess they're a women's activist group, protested and they protested against cuts to domestic violence services. Right. Helena Bonham Carter commended the protest, basically saying it was like the perfect time to protest.
Well, I mean, it's a activist movie, so it makes all the sense in the world that protesting another cause is not inappropriate. It's quite appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. You had fun fact you found out about her too, right?
Yes. So she is actually the great-granddaughter of H.H. Asquith, who is the British Prime Minister during the filming of this movie, or historically, 1908 to 1916, which is disenfranchising women, and he was kind of a dick.
Basically, yeah, that's what I read too.
Yeah, his whole thing was he's not very pro-women at all.
Well, I mean, shocker, right?
Also, Helen Pankhurst is in this movie. She's credited with a special thank you, as well as her daughter, which is the great-granddaughter of Emmeline Pankhurst.
I could have got that from the last name, but thank you for giving us the whole diatribe. Thank you.
That's what I got.
Yeah. Also, one of the things that we found was that Meryl Streep, when asked if she was a feminist, when she was doing interviews for this movie, said something to the effect of, "No, I'm a humanitarian. I believe in equal everything." And people were not happy about that. And I will say I am on the same front as her. I am very much equal everything. I'm not pro women above others.
People are not the same. They do deserve to be treated with the same level of respect and equality.
That is true. But there are situations for feminism that we're not going to get into because I will be eviscerated at the stake. I realize that. But there are things in the feminist movement that I believe are not necessarily pro-equality, but more pro-women, and we need to be a little bit careful about that.
Well, there's a concern about going too far with the best intentions to make things unequal in the other direction. So it's everyone deserves the same rights and the same respect and the same opportunities in the world.
But we do need to acknowledge that because we're people, we are equal. We are not the same. And I think that those two things get convoluted a lot, and people believe that we should have the same everything where we're people. So we're not the same. I do not deserve the same pay as a doctor because I'm not a doctor. I didn't go through the schooling. I just don't. I don't have the qualifications. So that kind of stuff we can acknowledge, but there are also things between men and women, especially in the workforce and things like that, that are not the same. They should be equal, but they're not the same.
Well, it's with equal rights comes equal responsibility. So you have to take the good and the bad for everyone. That's just part of being a person living in the world.
Agreed. Okay, so before we move into your history minute, which I know we want to do, I want to acknowledge the fact that the women's rights movement has not gone as good as we had hoped. I'm sure that
as well
as good, nobody cares. Regardless of the fact, people, I would think, would have thought we'd come a much longer way to equality by now. But today, the day that we're filming this, the Trump administration has rolled back, or had the Supreme Court approve rolling back, so I don't know if it's officially done or if it's in process of being done, but rolling back Obamacare legislation that made employers cover contraceptive for women. And you guys can feel however you want to feel, and I never push politics on people, but the right to a woman's body should really not be political. It should be a personal choice. And it should be covered because we don't want things to happen where we now have to struggle with the concept of abortion, which is much more polarizing. So,
well, you're not allowed to have a different opinion on that because there's a right opinion and there's a wrong opinion. No one gets to tell me what to do with my life. No one should get to tell anyone else to get what they can do with their life. Like, that's...
Now, I do understand that in an employer's defense that they feel that with religious reasons, that if they don't believe in contraceptive, they shouldn't have to cover it. I disagree. I feel like religion should never be something that takes place in the workplace. So because you have a different religious belief does not have any effect on me as a person. You do not need to cover your own contraceptive because your religion doesn't allow for it, but mine does, so you shouldn't be able to decide for me. That's how I feel. But regardless of that, I just wanted to make sure we mentioned that because it's sad that we're sitting here today and have to mention that. So anyway, do you want to go back in history? Because let's just cheer this right out.
Before we get to my history minute, one last interesting thing about this movie is that one of the founders of Imdb was actually in this movie.
Oh, was he?
His name is Cole Needham. And I probably butchered his last name, but that's because Needham is a town in Massachusetts, and that's how it's said.
Is he an actor?
He is an actor, but he's not really. He's in a few things, but not major things.
Interesting.
But founder of IMDb, which we use all the time.
So, hey man.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Thank you. So, on to my history minute.
Tyler's History Minute.
So, we're going to talk about women's suffrage.
Really? Gee. Really
so there were a couple instances of women having the right to vote prior to this, but this is the first country that legalized the women's right to vote.
Which is?
At least partially. New Zealand. That was in 1893.
And the last country would be?
Well, certain countries still don't have it.
Well, I was going to say the last country is probably Saudi Arabia, considering as of the filming of this movie in 2015, they had not done it yet.
They said that they were going to
They're working on
promise about thinking about maybe considering, but not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, they suck.
Okay, on a recording. Good.
So, United States passed the 19th Amendment in 1920. Tremendous missed opportunity there to not have the 19th Amendment passed in 1919. Just a weird quirk.
Get it together, guys.
We were robbed. Like, it's a travesty that it didn't happen before that, but 1919 for the 19th Amendment just is kind of a weird... should have happened.
Isn't threes like evil though? So like 1919 doesn't that like, I don't know, sign of the devil or something?
It's not like 666, no. Do you know the state that was the first state to allow for women to vote?
I mean, yes, but go ahead.
You do know only because I told you right before we filmed this, or recorded this. It's Wyoming, which people probably don't normally guess.
No.
So they actually demanded that they be allowed to give women the right to vote before they became a state.
Good.
So they were a territory that allowed women to vote, and they said, women are coming with us. You can take it or leave it, basically.
Good for them.
In 1888 to 1889. So Emmeline Pankhurst founded the Women's Social Political Union, and their motto was deeds, not words, which we saw in the movie.
Yeah, we did see that.
And it was born out of a frustration over so many failed attempts and feeling like nothing was moving forward. And because there was bills in 1870, 1886, 1897, and by 1903 she was just like, it's been 40 years, guys. Let's actually do something now.
Yeah, let's do something about this.
So she's decided that more violent protest would be called for. So they did throw rocks. They didn't show them throwing rocks at 10 Downing Street, which would have been cool. Because for those of you who don't know, that's the house of the Prime Minister. So they threw rocks at his house.
Nice.
She actually paused this for World War I. For her women's suffrage, she put on hold basically for the good of the nation in fighting the Germans and the Austrians during World War I. And she was involved in the white feather propaganda, basically.
Okay.
So, there's a movie with Heath Ledger in it called The Four Feathers. And
ooh, Heath Ledger, I'm in. Sign me up.
So at this time, if you were given a white feather, it means you were a coward. And so it was kind of a get the young men to fight, kind of don't be a
white feather.
Don't be a wuss, basically.
Gotcha.
She did have a great quote that's less offensive, I feel. Women are very slow to rouse, but once they are aroused, once they are determined, nothing on earth and nothing in heaven will make women give way. It is impossible.
I mean, there's some connotations there.
Phrasing is poor, given the current context of the word aroused. But that's not how it's intended. It's just a meaningful thing. It's almost like hell hath no fury, like a woman's scorn.
That's the first thing that came to mind for me too. But
it's once they decide on something. Yeah, once they decide something, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time.
I mean, fair.
And then for the American listeners, Susan B. Anthony was a very well-known abolitionist, temperance movement, and suffragette. In the United States, she's the only woman, to my knowledge, other than Sacagawea, which is fairly recent, to be put on U.S. currency. Although they are talking about Harriet Tubman replacing Andrew Jackson, and good. About damn time. She was born in Adams, Mass.
Woo, Massachusetts!
Yep. She was a Quaker, which means that they're like the nicest people ever, because they believe in nonviolence to a
T, yeah.
How people should be is their belief system, basically. It's peace at a kind of like militant,
yeah.
Peaceful. Like they are just vehemently peaceful.
Okay, so you're pro-Quaker. Got it.
I'm just pro people being nice people. Like, how hard is it to not be an ass?
I don't know. You tell me.
Okay. But yeah, that's what I got for the history minute, is to talk about that for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Did you have fun researching that? Because it sounds like you enjoyed it. Yeah.
I did.
Okay, well, I'm glad. So do you want to go into the audience ask, which we have nothing of?
We have one, you said.
Audience asks.
We have one.
Don't lie to me.
Yeah, it was pandering. Stork. I'm not even gonna open it because I know what it is. Stork felt bad for us because nobody responded, which I'm pretty sure nobody has seen this movie, but you guys probably should see it. Like, let's watch some more female-based movies, guys.
It's worth at least a watch, just because it's a meaningful message.
It's a meaningful message and a meaningful movement that we don't talk enough about.
Yeah.
Anyway, Stork asked what your favorite Meryl Streep role is.
That's so freaking hard. There are so many good choices. It's almost impossible to choose one. I mean, Sophie's Choice. I think I have to mention Kramer versus Kramer.
Yeah, because it has something to do with you. So
personally, selfishly, I have to do that because I say that legitimately on a daily basis at my job. Yeah. Every day, I will say Kramer versus Kramer. Every day. Yeah.
So one day we will be covering that on the podcast just merely for that reason. But, yeah, I mean, I can't choose either. I mean, we've done other movies with her, and I will say over and over that we enjoy her. I mean, a movie that is big in my family would be Mamma Mia. My mom and my sister watch it more often than I can count. But because of the podcast, I do need to mention Devil Wears Prada because Stork and others have insinuated that I am Meryl Streep in that movie. And I don't know how I feel about that. And I feel like I need to do the movie just to unpack how I feel about that is what I feel. So. And
then somebody mistakenly said that was Helen Mirren instead of Meryl Streep.
Yeah, it was a very confusing situation that happened there. But regardless, I feel like those two movies will be coming soon. So, you know, thanks guys for reminding us of all the movies we haven't covered that we need to, is basically what I'm going to say there. But yeah, nobody else had anything else to say, so I think you guys have homework that you need to at least see this movie once. Everybody's basically home, and even if you're out of lockdown, you're still mostly home. Most things still aren't really open or fully open. So,
and if you aren't on lockdown, you should not be going places just because you should be a person.
Right.
And, like, not wanting to propagate a deadly virus.
Yeah, so stay home and watch this movie, and then tweet us about it and let us know what you thought. Do that. Okay. So, do you want to go into the reviews?
Reviews.
Reviews and ratings. So, Rotten Tomatoes has it at a 73.
Okay, I mean, we've had worse.
Audience score of 68. So
we've still had worse.
Lower. So, I looked at some of the reviews, and the overwhelming consensus is that it's an important topic, but it's poorly done in terms of the delivery.
Okay.
So their complaint is that it is focused on the movie or the cause, but there's no real great execution. The acting is fine.
Well, I mean, you're going to say Meryl Streep's acting is bad because I will come for you.
Well, the acting is top notch, but there's no real character development. There's no real connection or human interests to the actresses.
That's
other
fair.
Than maybe Maude, but it kind of falls short of what it could have been.
Okay. So what's your review?
So I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Okay.
Because I do agree with that. I do think it's a very meaningful topic, but it's a meaningful topic that they didn't execute to the best that they could.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was actually going to give it a 7. I really wanted to love this movie because obviously everything it stands for. I wanted to love this movie, and Meryl Streep is amazing.
She's like Anthony Hopkins in The Silence of the Lambs. She's in it for 3 lines.
Well, right. So she did not make or break this movie, and I think that the acting of it in and of itself, I didn't have any complaints with any of the acting at all. I thought all of them did really well. But I had a really hard time with the fact that they didn't focus on more of the people. I really wanted to see their stories because I think it's important to the movement. I do think it was a powerful movie. I just think that there were a lot of places where I was left wanting to understand more, and that kind of fell apart for me a little bit.
It's it's a broad brush that they want to encapsulate everything, but it didn't give the coverage that it needed.
Yeah,
to use a painting metaphor.
Like the main part or the catalyst at the end was, the girl got hit by the horse, and I should have had more of a jarring reaction to that, and I didn't.
Right.
I was just kind of like, oh, why'd you do that? Like,
well, that's one of the reasons I wanted the movie to be focused on that particular person, because it would have been such a jarring moment at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it didn't have the impact it should have, because we didn't have time to care about her.
Right.
So
she was an ancillary character that wasn't a central part of the movie.
Right. But that said, even though I'm only giving it a 7, I still think this is important to watch because there isn't a lot on this topic. And in order to prove to filmmakers that we want more on this topic, we need to be consuming the what we have on that topic. Otherwise, they don't believe that it's a popular topic and they won't cover it. So we need to prove that we want more. So in that vein, I think that people need to be watching this to prove that we want something better and show interest.
I also have to take points because Meryl Streep's in it for 4 lines. Like, how do you not just say, okay, this movie's your movie. We're just going to set up a camera, do whatever you want to do. Because, like, such a wasted opportunity to not have her in this movie.
Right, I agree. So now we need to have a movie with the Indian princess. I don't know who would want to play that role, and I don't know if this woman is Indian, so don't come for me. But I would like to see the girl who is in The Good Place play it. I don't know if she's actually Indian, but she plays it in that movie pretty well. And I think she's got the princess vibe and everything. So, yeah.
All right. So next week's movie
is your choice.
Is my choice. And I have to do it because I've been dying to see this. And it's not actually a movie, but it's now a movie.
It's now a movie, but yeah.
It's Hamilton, because I've been wanting to go to Broadway to see it forever, but tickets are sold out until 2070 billion.
Right, exactly. And there is some controversy that may actually get it removed from Disney Plus. I hope it doesn't. I don't think it will, but just in the off chance that it does, we cannot not see it. So that is why it's gotten...
It's also, I would imagine, a little bit more uplifting because it's a musical.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a happier...
We're hoping for some levity, but even if not, we have arranged our schedule so that the next movie is levity.
Yeah.
So don't worry, happiness is coming.
So
anyways, that's it. Thank you guys for listening. If you want to talk to us outside the podcast, I am on Twitter at CinematicallyC. Tyler is on Twitter, blame Tyler CC. You can tweet us with any of your questions for next week's Hamilton movie. I put out audience ask very late, as per usual. It's just my life now, apparently. So tweet us whenever you want, DM us questions, anything like that, and we'll be happy to cover them. And yeah, I think that's everything. We're on every kind of social media that you can possibly think of if you look up at CinematicallyC, but Twitter is your best bet. Yeah. So yeah, thank you to Jake at Athens Music for our intro and outro music, and we'll be back next week with Hamilton.
Thank you all for listening.